You like food? Of course you do. I promise you, the next island on our tour of the New World will be a big hit. Whole Cake Island, an island literally covered by sweets. Nothing could be wrong with this one. Under the protection of civil rights leader, Emperor Big Mom, Whole Cake Island is a paradise. Explore the unique outlying islands dedicated to their own delicious foods, where you and your family can eat to your heart's content. You might even get lucky and be invited to one of Whole Cake Island's famous tea parties, where you can dance the night away with living inanimate objects. And it's all free! Technically! How much do you value your soul? Eddie, am I reading this right? Soul? So what are you waiting for? Continue your tour of the New World today by visiting the wonderful Whole Cake Island, where probably nothing bad will happen to you if you just keep your head down. Against all odds, I have made it to the Whole Cake Island arc of One Piece, and it's breaking my heart, and I can't stand it anymore, and I want to go home. Today, I'm going to be talking about everything up through Luffy and Nami's jailbreak. That's all I know, so you can imagine why I'm so down in the dumps today. This arc does a masterful job of recontextualizing one of the central figures to One Piece in a way that I really appreciated because of how brutal it was. Over and over again, we see Sanji suffer in ways I never thought we would, and I'm really excited to talk to you about it today. This is the juicy backstory on our leggy boy Cook that I've been waiting for. The setting is fantastic, and Big Mom is such a fascinating villain. To those of you just joining us on this journey, I'm Denny, and this is the series where I give my first impressions on the One Piece anime as a first-time viewer. If you're curious about my thoughts on previous arcs, there is a link to a playlist in the description. Now, without further ado, let's sail on to Whole Cake Island. Let's begin by setting the plate. There are a lot of moving pieces in this arc that only become more complicated as the story goes on. Sanji is traveling on Big Mom's ship with Gang and Tamago. Right away, we get some important plot details, as well as a brief look at what Big Mom's kingdom is like. I totally dig her aesthetic. She's got little chess-themed people running around, but it's also mixed with an Alice in Wonderland Queen of Hearts vibe, topped off with delicious sweets. It's like an acid trip childhood fantasy. On the ship, we get two important plot details. Vito, Gang's right-hand man, is a big fan of Germa 66, from a comic book that he reads. Apparently, Sanji's family were such notorious scumbags in the past that they have become famous as cartoon villains. The next bit that had my mind racing was that Gang's wife looked exactly like Lola from Thriller Bark. This practically confirmed a long-held and maybe fairly obvious theory of mine that Lola is Big Mom's daughter. I've been waiting to see what would happen with that Viver card for a long damn time, and I have some mixed opinions on how it's used, but for now, let's check in with the rest of the crew. Everyone is starving to death without Sanji because Luffy wasted all their food in some toxic concoction. Naturally, he catches a big juicy fish and then eats it, but it turns out it has poison skin and he nearly dies. I thought this was a really odd choice, since we've been told and shown multiple times that Luffy is immune to poison. They do say that without his immunity, he would have died instantly, but this just felt very off for the sake of story convenience, because right after this, Germa 66 enters the story. This is another crew that I love the general aesthetic of. Their ship being a giant snail with a castle on it was so unique and tells the viewer a lot about how this group wants to represent themselves to the world. This is one of the big moments I was expecting in this arc, and it comes much sooner than I anticipated: meeting Sanji's family. Well, two members anyway. There is Yanji and Raiju. Yanji is Sanji's younger brother, the fourth brother. The naming for all the siblings is based on their birth order. Sanji apparently means 3, which I suppose Japanese speakers would have picked up on, but probably assumed that it was related to his recruitment into the Straw Hats. Either way, this got me thinking that rank is very important to this family. The full eyebrow reveal on Yanji looks so weird to me. I love it. Then the oldest sibling, Raiju, sucks the poison out of Luffy, with her only explanation being that it isn't a big deal since she's poison pink. Whatever the hell that means. If I had to guess, it has something to do with science! Turns out Germa 66 is a science-based military force, which is extremely unique for this series. Their technology is far more advanced than anything we've seen yet, and we learn more later on, But even here, the siblings are literally wearing power suits. But thanks to Brook, we also learn the most important thing about the Vinsmokes. They are royalty. Sanji is a prince. Back in Zou, I thought when we were told that Germa 66 was a bunch of assassins, that was that. I even talked about how my theory that Sanji was a prince had been proven wrong. Welp, sorry to disappoint you, Dad, but I was right about something for once. Mr. Prince, baby. It all makes sense. I fucking knew it, and you knew it too, but you were just watching me crumble before your eyes, getting your sick kicks. So, the Vinsmokes are an evil family who conquered the North Blue in the past and have quite the reputation. Notably, even though Germa is a nation without soil, they are still invited to participate in the reverie. That is mentioned in a passing comment, but I can't imagine it's not going to be important with that summit coming up soon. Germa sails off, and we get a bit more info on Big Mom's territory from Peckhams. He tells us that Whole Cake Island is at the heart of the Toto Land, which is made up of 34 outlying individual islands, each with their own minister. This is yet another example of Oda feeling far more confident, both as a writer, but also in his audience, to go ahead with these more complicated political systems. At this point, I'm not sure if any of these ministers will ever become relevant outside of punchy fights, but the groundwork is laid early if he does want to pull the trigger on some local discord. The Sunny is then intercepted by a Tart ship, and while everyone is hiding, the crew realizes that Luffy and Chopper are gone. They headed on shore together, and their whole entrance is so fucking cute. Luffy and Chopper are so sweet together. I wish we saw them paired up more often. When they realize that they are on an island of sweets, they freak out and stumble into a chocolate town. This whole setting is so adorable. It's the perfect childhood fantasy, and it was such a good idea to introduce it to the audience through these two characters. The pair are tearing through the place, and when Chopper says he smells something good, Luffy immediately says let's go, and they haul ass out of sight like Roadrunner. This sequence was spectacular. These two characters were perfect for this because they're giving each other something to bounce off of, getting each other more excited, which gets the audience more excited too. This works in a way that couldn't have with the rest of the crew. Everyone else would be amazed too, but they wouldn't be bouncing off the walls with unrestrained childish glee, bringing the audience in on the feeling of discovery and childlike wonder that will soon be contrasted by the darkness of this land. That's something the series does really well. It doesn't just treat the settings as set dressings, but gets you to feel the majesty and awe. It's through the character interactions that things become more impactful to the audience. Chopper repeatedly calls this land a paradise, and based off of what we initially hear from Big Mom herself, that appears to be the goal. Not only is this a land of sweets and tasty food, with an old school Disney cartoonish charm, but Big Mom wants to bring together people of all races and have the Toto Land be completely free of discrimination. That is extremely fascinating to me, since so much of One Piece since Saobody, but even dating back to Arlong Park, has been about racism. Usually the villains are big naughty racist jerks, but Big Mom doesn't seem to be. I'm assuming there has to be some catch, but aside from one important hint later on, I can see this being who she is. After all, Big Mom is a pirate, and most of the racists we've seen in this world either have something to do with the world government or are somehow related to the complex Fishman Island situation. Aside from Arlong and Hordy, I don't think we've ever seen any pirate groups that are outright racists, as it kind of goes against the freedom creed they all pursue. Big Mom isn't some rookie. She's an emperor who's been around for quite some time. She might be the villain, but she's also a true pirate. Even Doflamingo was a celestial dragon first and foremost, and being a pirate was more so a means to an end. This complexity to her character is extremely interesting to me, and although she isn't perfect, and the Toto Land isn't the paradise it appears to be, I am curious where Oda is going with this. Of course, Luffy running off into town can't just go smoothly, and while everyone else on the ship freaks out that they have to find him before they are discovered, Nami has played this game many times. She just casually waits for a sign to tell them where Luffy is. This is a small moment, but I appreciate how at this point, the crew just expects and accepts Luffy's behavior. The signal this time just so happens to be my personal favorite to date. From the Sunny, the crew hears someone in town scream, "Somebody ate the cafe." Luffy and Chopper's never-ending quest to eat as many buildings as possible leads us directly into meeting Sanji's bride-to-be, Pudding! I wasn't expecting to meet her so soon in this arc, and I definitely wasn't expecting this gaggle of bloated goons to be the characters we meet her through, but I think this works really well. There's a ruckus in town, but Luffy and Chopper are covered for by Pudding, whose cafe was just devoured. She says she's just happy that they like the food. She's so nice. Pudding takes the Straw Hats back to her home, and everyone stumbles around into discovering who each other are. This leads to even more unexpected info. Turns out Big Mom has 85 kids and 43 husbands. Nearly all of her pirate crew are blood relatives, which is extremely interesting to me. These dots have not been connected yet, but I'm thinking that Big Mom's massive family is going to mean more than just a quirky character trait that will tie directly into her supposed racial paradise. But there is a truly spectacular intro song for Big Mom that I love. It feels like a completely fucked up acid trip of an old school Disney movie with all the sentient objects, from food to her own happy son, dancing around. The song is perfectly delightful and horrifically fucked up. Aside from Mama singing about a tea party from hell, we also get the first of many glimpses into how this paradise is more so a paradise for me and not for thee. It would appear that Big Mom is able to sustain her paradise by murder and plunder. Then, at the very end of the song, she's excited to hear that Luffy has come. What an excellent introduction. Back at Pudding's place, we learn that Pudding and Sanji have already met, and that sweet Pudding already has a crush on our Sanji. However, despite his entire personality, Sanji rejected her. Everyone tears up at that, because that's a great thing to hear. Sanji rejected a girl. A great girl. For them. This was a much needed line though. Sanji is obviously a dedicated Straw Hat, but he has been known to say some less than kind things to the rest of the crew if he has to choose between them and the ladies. A plan is set in motion. Pudding is going to lead Sanji to a rendezvous point on the shore of Whole Cake Island. She likes him, but she can't take him away from his loving friends. What a sweet girl. What a delightfully charming young lady. This wouldn't be One Piece if there wasn't trouble in paradise. Upon returning to the Sunny, Peckhams is missing, and on the bathroom floor is a note that reads, "Turn back." So naturally, Luffy decides to move ahead. While the Straw Hats are traveling through the Toto land, let's check in with some other key players. I think a really vital scene comes with the introduction of Sanji's older brothers. This shows them to be two of the most cold-blooded people we've ever met in this world, but also gets at something a bit deeper. Germa 66 essentially acts as mercenaries for hire, and as another ripple effect of Doflamingo's defeat, they were hired to intervene in a civil war. They easily end matters and are regarded as devils by the losers and angels by the winners, while they explicitly don't give a fuck about either side. This is something that Oda loves to play with. This idea of hero worship, and it all being a matter of perspective and interpretation of someone else's motivation. It's a quick moment that really highlights the dark side of heroes in war, but I think it does a great job of showing us exactly who these two characters are and what Germa 66 represents to the world at large in a concise way. Something else I found extremely interesting were Big Mom's hunger pangs. She is terrorizing a town like King Kong, devouring everything in sight because she has an insatiable hunger for some fancy pants dessert I can't possibly pronounce. She is utterly unstoppable in this rampage until Jinbei shows up to stuff some sentient goodies into her fat pie hole. Welcome back, fish dude. It completely slipped my mind that Jinbei would still have to deal with Big Mom given her relationship with Fishman Island, and I'm so happy to see that he's gonna be around again. The reason he's here to begin with is because the time has finally come for him to join the Straw Hats. He tells Big Mom as much after she's calmed down, and she doesn't get as pissed as I thought she would, but she busts out this mysterious roulette wheel and tells Jinbei that he'll have to pay the price for leaving her service. During her rampage, we are shown that Big Mom can drain someone's life force, since she does it to her own son, and while we don't find out what Jinbei lost in this section I'm talking about today, I am worried our boy may have been sucked dry. I'm going to talk more about Mama powers in a bit because they are really interesting for the series at large. Back with the Straw Hats, we learn more about Pedro the Jaguar. Firstly, I just want to say that his vibes were much needed for this arc. His attitude seriously balances out the most wacky and cutesy cast of primary characters One Piece has ever centered around, but the most interesting thing about him is in the past, back when he was a pirate, he had been to Whole Cake Island before, searching for the road poneglyph. Some not so chill stuff happened, but this Sanji rescue mission gives him a second chance to achieve that goal, and I love me a good redemption story. It isn't entirely clear why the road poneglyphs mean so much to him. Maybe being from Zou is explanation enough. But either way, he and Brook split off to track down Big Mom's poneglyph. I'm glad that plot thread is still ongoing and won't just be dropped for hundreds of more episodes. The rest of the crew arrive at the agreed upon rendezvous to meet Sanji and Pudding, but instead chase down a fake Sanji and get lost in a living woods where everyone runs into doubles and the forest is actively conspiring to trick everyone through a dastardly song. These clowns are stuck here for a long ass time, and it's definitely the least interesting part of this whole section. So let's move on to the juicy bits. Sanji's father changed the entire atmosphere of this arc. The entire Vinsmoke family hasn't come together yet, but it's clear Judge Vinsmoke needs no support from anyone. He's an arrogant, self-centered, and cruel bastard. It's here that we get some real flashbacks into Sanji's childhood. In particular, the one where he's beaten and disowned by his father may be the angriest I've ever been in any of these flashbacks. My heart was pounding and my blood was boiling. Probably because I'm so familiar with Sanji's character at this point, and I'm not used to seeing him in such a powerless position. As a kid, he loved to cook, but he wasn't as strong as his brothers, and he was beaten because of it by the people who are supposed to love him the most. I only get more furious the more flashbacks we see, but what an introduction. When Sanji and Judge fight, I think that we learn everything we need to about who Judge is. Sanji surprised him with his capability as a fighter, but Judge is no slouch either. However, the only way he was able to win is because of his brutal disregard for the lives of those beneath him. To block Sanji's counterattack, Judge orders 3 of his men to stand in his path, and then stabs through one of them to attack Sanji. During the fight, Judge tells Sanji that he views him as a complete failure, and he was only brought back as a sacrifice to Big Mom, so his real sons don't have to marry into her family. Then, to top everything off, he has Riju strap bomb bracelets to Sanji's wrists so he can't leave or his hands will be blown off. As much as I absolutely hate Judge, I think this was such a rock-solid character introduction, and Oda managed to condense so much into so little time. There is more to Judge, but everything you need to know was on display right from the jump. Personally, just from this intro, Judge jumped to the top of my most hated villains list. I don't see anything redeeming about him at all. He's devilishly clever, insanely brutal, and has a mental chokehold on Sanji. He's an absolutely fantastic villain, and Sanji is really in over his head now in a way that changes the entire trajectory of this arc. Now, I want to talk about a couple of small plot details that have been lingering in the background for quite some time, but I think are beginning to coalesce into something extremely important. Firstly, we finally get the long-awaited reunion of Big Mom and Caesar Clown, much to Caesar's delight. Turns out Big Mom was the reason Caesar was experimenting on the kids at Punk Hazard. She wants to be able to make all her family members gigantic, saying it's her dream to eat at eye level with all the races of the world. Caesar is then thrown into a lab and given 2 months to complete the research, which he believes is impossible. Once again, this ties into Big Mom's racial equality cause, but I think it's notable that she wants to make everyone her size, rather than just shrinking herself down to everyone else's size. I'm not quite sure what that means in this context, but I think it hints at a more selfish motivation under the surface. Speaking of going under the surface, once again, another One Piece Paradise Island is revealed to have a dark side. We saw that Big Mom could take others' life forces away earlier, and that's because she ate the Soul fruit. She charges a 1-month tax of your soul for every 6 months you're in the Toto land, and then she puts those souls into whatever she wants, which is how everything becomes anthropomorphized. I mean, these people are doing this of their own free will, so it's not the most heinous crime, but it does add an eerie atmosphere to the Disney-like wonder of this location. Also, the Soul fruit is now the second devil fruit we are told directly relates to the existence of souls, the first being Brook's Revive fruit. This is something that feels like it's going to be relevant in the endgame somehow. The fact that souls exist and can be manipulated just feels far too important a detail to be ignored. But also, why does Big Mom even want things like houses and food to have souls? I think there's a lot left to learn about the importance of souls, and that brings me to the next plot detail. The Straw Hats are still in the forest, and so much weird shit has gone down that I'm not gonna bother talking about all of it. I'll just go into the bare bones facts. Turns out the giant head in the ground is Lola's father, and that's how everyone finds out Lola is Big Mom's daughter. Chopper and Carrot are trapped in a mirror world, so it's just Nami and Luffy left in the forest, and Cracker, one of the Sweet Three generals, arrives. In order to help Luffy against Cracker, Nami uses the Viver card that she got from Lola. How would that help in combat? Well, turns out Viver cards somehow incorporate the soul of whoever they belong to, and this one is from Big Mom's soul. Again, way more soul craziness going on. Since the homies, dope name, are just objects imbued with souls by Big Mom, they react to her soul, and for some reason, Nami can just blackmail them into doing what she wants. So, she's able to support Luffy in his battle against Cracker. I'm mixed on this whole Cracker fight. I thought everything about him and the fight itself were pretty boring at the start, but we do get some cool information. Luffy isn't the first of the worst generation to try to fight his way through Whole Cake Island, but none even got close to Big Mom. Kid, Scratchman, the Mad Monk, and even Gang tried before he ended up joining her. I think it's interesting that we're told the Mad Monk was the only one who was able to beat one of the Sweet Three generals, but not even Kid was able to do that. I feel like Kid's top tier with Luffy and Law, but I guess the Mad Monk is someone we have to worry about now. After all this, then everything gets way better. Luffy breaks Cracker's armor in 2 Kong gun hits, then the real Cracker hops out, whose design is so much better, and then he makes like 6 more indestructible dudes with his biscuit powers. This was wild, and I'll talk about it in a bit after we check in with Sanji. Sanji watches a butterfly from his balcony, and upon seeing it fly higher, it hits him that he's truly losing his freedom. This is when his older brothers arrive, his tormentors from the past, and seeing Sanji actually trembling was deeply upsetting. He is clearly shaken given his circumstances, but he does stand up to Niji about wasting food and protects the chef from his abuse. Despite their modifications, Sanji is clearly the most powerful one here, but he still has to deal with the wrist bombs and the threat on Zeph's life, so he is entirely powerless against them. Later on, Niji beats the chef, and the living hell that being around these monsters on a daily basis would be really set in. Sanji wants to take vengeance on Niji, but Yonji intercepts him and takes him to a secret lab where things get real sci-fi. Germa 66 consists of clone soldiers. Judge worked with Vegapunk back in the day and is a renowned scientist. Apparently, this was the exact research project that got Vegapunk arrested, but Judge escaped. Interesting to know Vegapunk probably isn't working for the government of his own will. Not only that, but the Vinsmoke children are all genetically engineered superhumans. At first, I thought this meant Sanji too, and that would explain a lot, but actually, he's the only one who isn't, and I think this is going to be another element that is important to the theme of this arc. So this explains why his brothers don't have any emotions while he does, and why he's viewed as such a failure. Raiju is the only one who is kind to him, except when they're around anyone else in the family. This is a classic case of covering her own ass because she doesn't want to be brutally bullied too, and honestly, I can't really blame her because these people are fucking insane. After years of watching his failure of a son, Judge faked Sanji's death and had him locked away. This iron mask really has nothing to do with the story, but it does look damn cool and adds to the atmosphere of Sanji's childhood imprisonment, unable to even show his face to those who visited him behind bars. It's here that we learn more about Sanji's mother, and this did not go where I was expecting. She was a sick woman who died while he was still young, but she was kind to Sanji, and it's clear that they loved each other very much. Despite his inexperience, she was the only person who encouraged Sanji's passion for cooking. It's thanks to her that while locked away, Sanji began training himself to be a better cook. However, this solitude doesn't last forever, and when his siblings find out that he is alive and a prisoner, they take advantage of it and come to his cell to beat him every day. So, Sanji decided to break out with Riju's help. Before fleeing, he has to get the key from his dad's chambers, and we see the final encounter between this father and son. Judge is the harshest person in this entire series. He tells Sanji that he wants him to leave, but not to ever tell anyone that he's his father because he is ashamed of him. I fucking hate this dude. Sanji then breaks free thanks to Riju, who gives him the push he needed and cries out for him to run and never look back. She tells him that the sea is broad and that one day he will find kind people. Extremely reminiscent of Saul in Robin's flashback fleeing Ohara. Sanji makes it to the cruise ship where eventually he'll meet Zeph. In the present, he has been forced back into imprisonment by his tormentors. His life has come full circle. Now earlier, I said I didn't expect Sanji's mom to be how she was presented here. And what I meant by that was that I thought Sanji's attitude toward women had to have been instilled in him by her, but from what we've seen, turns out this came from Zeph. I think this is actually far more impactful as it comes from something meaningful to his father figure. He tells Sanji that men should never kick women. He tells him not to become something that he hates, so Sanji doesn't do it. Out of respect for women, yes, but also out of respect for Zeph. We have seen that Sanji is willing to die before he hits a woman, and this recontextualizes things to tell us that Sanji is willing to die before he becomes a man that Zeph hates. Sanji's relationship with his father has really been highlighting how important Zeph is to him, and I appreciated that. Sanji is never open about his feelings, aside from having a boner, so this little peek behind the curtain really hammered home not just the love, but the reverence that Sanji has for Zeph. Story-wise, this was necessary to show why Sanji just doesn't run away, but it also showcases how Zeph made him the man that he is. Back in the seducing woods, Luffy and Nami continue their battle against Cracker. After Luffy is deflated from using 4th gear, Nami has to protect him, and she fights Cracker one-on-one for maybe 30 seconds, before Luffy jumps back in to save her ass. I think that everything with this Cracker fight went on way too long, but a turn comes when Nami realizes they can use Luffy's appetite to their advantage. Using her new climate act, she soaks Cracker's biscuits, not a sex joke, making them soft enough for Luffy to eat, and I thought this was perfect. Not only does Luffy's inhuman, monstrous appetite finally come in handy, but this is great teamwork. Nami's solo fight with Cracker was beyond lame, but she is excellent in a supporting role. Without her, Luffy definitely would not have won. Actually, Nami is more so leading the fight and using Luffy as her weapon in this battle of attrition. I think this is by far her best showing in a long time, and definitely one of her best battles to date. Luffy ends up getting so full. Like cartoonishly the fullest I think he could ever realistically be drawn, and Cracker also begins to grow tired. In order to finish the fight, Luffy uses his plump and arguably voluptuous body to its fullest by going 4th gear tank man full version. Not quite sure what the difference is. It seems like maybe his lower body is extra tough, or generally he's just more reinforced than usual. I'm not sure if this is going to be a running thing where Luffy has different versions of 4th gear, or if this was just for a comedy bit, but either way, Luffy uses this to rocket Cracker out of the forest, and he goes crashing right into the Whole Cake Chateau, alerting everybody that Luffy is still a problem. Now this is when the arc gets devastating. I hate when friends fight in this show. Using King Bomb, Nami and Luffy race toward the Whole Cake Chateau and intercept the Vinsmoke carriage. Sanji steps out to confront them, playing the part that he's been forced into for the sake of protecting those he cares about most, including the Straw Hats, although this is brutal. To prevent his brothers from fighting and making matters worse, Sanji attacks Luffy, and that first kick to Luffy's face made me wince. That quick flash of his skeleton cracking was so upsettingly great. Sanji really gives it to Luffy, who refuses to fight back, and that final kick that knocks Luffy's tooth out hurt to watch. But the most powerful moment of the scene is when Nami marches up to Sanji and smacks him. That made me tear up. But the waterworks really started flowing after Luffy got back up. Sanji is riding away in his family's carriage, while Luffy shouts after him that he knows Sanji is the one who is hurting and that he won't eat anyone else's cooking. He will wait right here for Sanji to return, or he'll starve to death. He shouts that he cannot become the king of the pirates without Sanji. That last part, damn burst. Fuck, man. That's the stuff right there. This whole Sanji sequence took two of the best moments from the best saga of One Piece, Water 7 of course, and remixed them into something just as excellent. It felt like Usopp's duel mixed with Robin trying to leave the crew, and that's when Big Mom's army marches on the horizon. This was all so epic, with Luffy standing against this army and Nami there to support him as much as she could. They were doing a pretty fantastic job, with the both of them taking out a good portion of this army, but in the end, they are defeated and King Bomb is sliced in half. The Straw Hats were not looking so great at this point. Big Mom has mostly been looming in the background, but now she begins to take center stage. Sanji promises her that he'll marry Pudding without any resistance if she'll allow his friends to go free, and he really has no choice but to take her word for it. This is right before Luffy and Nami are captured, and in his last moments of consciousness, Luffy still clings to the spot he said he'd wait. But of course, Big Mom's a big liar, and she keeps Luffy and Nami trapped in a library prison. This concept of a library prison where Big Mom keeps her collections of various oddities in pristine condition is a really interesting one. We see her showing it off to the Vinsmokes, and Judge asks about the giants, pointing out that he hasn't seen any in the Totoland despite all the other races. This pisses Mom off. She plays it cool, but what the hell is going on here? I don't think Big Mom is a giant, despite her being giant, but there does seem to be some history here. It definitely has to do with her trying to transform other people into giants, and I wonder if she's trying to replace giants because of some beef she has with them. I don't know, but either way, this is one more point to this not being the racial paradise Big Mom claims it is. After this, we get the second conversation between Big Mom and Luffy. I think it's such an 80s bullshit businessman power move that Big Mom decided to call in on the snail rather than going to see him in person, even though we know she's close by. Just a little insult to Luffy, reminding him that he's not worthy of seeing her in all her glory. However, the most interesting part of this convo is between Big Mom and Nami. Now knowing about Lola's Viver card, Big Mom wants to know where Lola is so she can kill her. Yep, sounds about right. Lola, of all people, ran away from an arranged marriage, something that Big Mom claims would have given her the power to take down Kaido, Shanks, and Whitebeard, and to become the king of the pirates. Who the hell could Lola have been set up with? Big Mom doesn't mention Blackbeard. He also wasn't an emperor back then, but his absence is notable. Whoever it was horrific enough for Lola, the proposal maniac who even wanted to marry that creep Absalom, not to want the marriage. He would have to be an evil person. Blackbeard fits the bill, but I don't know. It doesn't seem quite right. In Pudding's flashback, Lola does mention wanting to pick her own husband, so things could just be that simple, and I'm looking way too much into it, but I don't think so. One last detail about this conversation before moving on. Big Mom is excited for two things. The first is wedding cake. She's like borderline in love with the idea of wedding cake, so something's up with that. But the second is the Tamate box from Fishman Island, which, thanks to some bureaucratic nonsense, is a bomb. She's so thrilled to open that up, and it's literally gonna explode right in her face. I doubt it will kill her, but I'm certain it will infuriate her. I love how this little detail has carried over for so long, and no one knows the truth about that box in this arc except for the audience, which is such great writing. Before one last twist of the knife, let's check in with the rest of the crew. Chopper and Carrot have been running around in Brule's Miro world since the Seducing Woods. Much like the Cracker fight, I felt all this Scooby-Doo style running around went on for a bit too long, but I did appreciate that Chopper stepped up into a leading role with Carrot. Now dubbed Chobro, he orchestrates a counterattack on Brule, and they take control of the Miro world, which is connected to every mirror on Whole Cake Island. Ideally, this actually comes in handy down the line. But now, we get the real good stuff. Brook and Chopper have been having a great showing this arc, and I already praised Nami earlier. I think the splitting of the crew that Oda has been doing for the last couple of arcs has been the best thing he could do at this stage of the story. It gives all these usually sidelined main characters some much needed time to shine, and oh boy, does Brook get his. Pedro and Brook's plan to copy the road poneglyph has hit a bit of a snag due to Pedro's history with Baron Tamago. However, they come up with a plan to use Pedro as bait. Before that goes into effect though, we get some more exposition about the poneglyphs. Apparently, there are 30 total, 4 road poneglyphs and 9 poneglyphs with specific info, whatever that means. And I guess you need to bring those 9 with you to Raftel. I love the poneglyphs, but this is getting borderline too complicated. Anyway, so Pedro is taking out dudes left and right, which leads to his fight with Baron Tamago, and we get the backstory on what went down the last time Pedro was on Whole Cake Island. He came with a bear mink named Zeppo, who I'm assuming is Beppo's father, which feels like it has to be significant later on. Here, we see that Pedro cut Tamago's eye, but he and Zeppo were captured by Big Mom. Because Peckhams begged for their lives, only Zeppo was killed, whereas Pedro removed his own eye and had 50 years of his life stolen. This was interesting. But this flashback had me wondering why Peckhams joined Big Mom in the first place. He's a much more integral part of the story than I expected. He's very loyal to Big Mom, but we have seen multiple instances of him going against her wishes, despite still being intensely loyal. So what's the deal here? I hope we learn more. In the present, the rematch between Pedro and Tamago gets going, and I just want to say that I love Tamago's attack names. For example, Legs Benedict is too good. Pedro then cuts him, and an egg yolk comes out. Is this man legit an egg? We'll have to find out next time. Meanwhile, Soul King bursts onto the scene in a tornado of rock and roll, baby! Brook has snuck into the treasure room and has to take on Big Mom's homies and other pirates. Like I said, this was such a good showing for Brook, who really hasn't had anything to do since Thriller Bark. And once again, there's another display of soul powers. Brook is able to take out the homies with his musical skills, and he gets this avatar ghost demon looking thing behind him, which is just sick. Of the crew that's here, Brook was the perfect person to bring along because of his powers. This, as well as the Weaver card with Nami, all feel like they were really well thought out, and god damn it if I can't help being impressed with the overall organization of this chaotic story. Then, to top everything off, once Brook has cleared the room, Big Mom herself comes to challenge him. Of all the characters here, I wasn't expecting Brook to be the first to face Big Mom, but he doesn't even hesitate. He goes hard against her in order to fulfill his mission, and while the action is good, it's Brook's determination and motivation that are fantastic. I'll talk about how this fight unfolds in my next video, but just goddamn, am I so happy Brook has some cool shit to do. And finally, the last section I want to talk about today is the final twist of the knife, one more stone of abuse on the mountain-crushing Sanji. Pudding. Sanji is in a prison, and he's still trying to make the best of it, so naturally, he clings to the one person who could make it more bearable. Rather than wallowing in misery, rather than just accepting utter defeat, he decides to make Pudding as happy as possible. He wants to become a man worthy of her, and that's really the best mindset he could have right now. So, he proposes to her like a real gentleman. We hear this from Pudding herself. She has gone to visit Luffy and Nami's cell and tells them that she isn't gonna marry Sanji, even though he made her happy. Then we get some more whisper bullshit to Luffy that the audience doesn't hear. Pudding tears up and leaves as Luffy screams after her, and this totally got me. Oda tricked me up until the very end. After all this, I thought she was gonna go all out rebel against her mother. I legit thought Pudding was going to try and kill herself to stop the wedding. Elsewhere in the chateau, Raju is sneaking around and is blasted with a gun and badly wounded. At first, I thought this was Gang or one of his men, since they fit the shady gangster stereotype, but it turns out, this was Pudding! We see that Pudding told Luffy and Nami that the wedding isn't gonna happen because she's going to kill Sanji, and it's revealed she's a three-eyed bitch who has been playing everyone from the start. That did explain so much of what went wrong upon arriving at Whole Cake Island, why she didn't bring Sanji to the shore. Her plan is to kill Sanji, while Big Mom eliminates Germa 66. We get all this information from Pudding to Raju, which Sanji overhears because he was trying to do something nice for her by bringing her some food. But Pudding really rips into him, mocking his vulnerabilities and desires. This was brutal, and it's followed by a really simple moment of Sanji just trying to light his cigarette in the rain, but he can't even do that. He tries, and just when he ignites a flame, the rain extinguishes it. His eyes are filled with tears while he keeps going, looking utterly defeated. Sanji is being put through the absolute ringer so far, and I feel awful for him. He needs a win. I need him to get a win. While this arc so far has pretty much been a massive downer, let's try and end on a positive. After Pudding showed her true colors, Luffy decided to rip his own arms off. That's not the positive. Actually, it's pretty horrifying, and every time his arms tore, made my skin crawl. The positive is that Jinbei shows up to rescue them. A new player has arrived, and the game is completely changed. But we'll pick up on that in my next video. Overall, I am really loving Whole Cake Island so far, and I'm desperately looking forward to what happens next. This feels like an instant classic One Piece arc already, complete with the intercrew drama that creates the most memorable moments in the franchise to me. While Whole Cake Island does have Enies Lobby vibes in its premise, the execution is entirely unique for this specific story. Of course, royalty forced into arranged marriages isn't a fresh storytelling well, but Oda manages to keep his story anything but cliche by quickly developing an awe-inspiring setting, complete with an excellent cast of villains that surround our heroes as they barely scrape by trial after trial in their two-pronged mission. He expertly teases out just enough of Big Mom at the beginning, but then lets Sanji and the Vinsmokes take center stage at first to establish the stakes of this arc, why it is so emotionally complicated for Sanji, and the reasoning for the decisions that he makes. All of this creates a genuine feeling of despair in this supposed paradise. But there is always hope. Luffy represents that hope as he keeps fighting to rescue his friend, who only seems to become more trapped as the arc goes on. I am loving Whole Cake Island so far. Obviously, the thing I'm most curious about right now is how Brook survives his encounter with Big Mom, and if this wedding is even gonna happen. But that's all talk for the next video. My coverage of Whole Cake Island continues next week, and I hope you'll join me there. Please let me know your thoughts on the Sanji Vinsmoke revelations. Did you see any of that coming? And what are your thoughts about Whole Cake Island as a setting? Let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, I'll shut up.